The council chamber emptied slowly, alien representatives casting sideways glances at the bloodied human as they filed out. Alina remained standing despite the shooting pain in her leg, a parting gift from the Arconian diplomatic escort that had attempted to prevent her shuttle from reaching the council station. "Commander Reyes." The voice came from behind, melodic yet somehow unsettling. A most irregular introduction to galactic society. Alina turned to face a being composed of shifting patterns of light, contained within a vaguely humanoid crystalline structure. The Volcran ambassador, the only council member who had abstained from the vote on Earth's provisional status. "We defended ourselves," Alina replied simply. "Where I'm from, firing on an unarmed diplomatic vessel constitutes an act of war." The crystalline being's patterns pulsed in what might have been amusement. The Arconians would say they were following Principle 17. Unknown vessels must demonstrate submission before approaching sovereign territory. You chose resistance instead. Fascinating. "With respect, Ambassador, humans don't demonstrate submission. Ever. So we observed." The Volcran's voice resonated directly in her mind now. It has been 12,000 years since a new species surprised the council. The Arconians will not forget this humiliation. Alina's comm implant chimed discreetly. A message from Earth. Colonial Fleet Hyperion, not responding to hails. Last position. Arcturus transit point. Possible communications malfunction. The Volcran's crystalline form flickered. "I would not delay your return to Earth, Commander. The Council's principles are selective in their application, particularly when witnesses are few." Back aboard her shuttle, Alina slumped in the command chair as the medical unit attended to her wounds. Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across the navigation console. "Setting course for Earth, Commander. Transit time approximately 17 hours. Negative. Adjust course for the Arcturus transit point." Park's hands froze. "Commander, our orders." "Our orders didn't anticipate an entire colonial fleet going dark immediately after our admission to the Council," Alina snapped. "And they certainly didn't anticipate Ambassador Thalax leaving the station right after the vote." Tactical Officer Rivera looked up from her console. "You think the Arconians are involved? They attacked our shuttle when we arrived. What do you think they'd do to an unarmed colonial fleet?" The shuttle accelerated away from the council station, its engines straining beyond recommended parameters. In the medical bay, Alina reviewed the council's battle principles, the sacred text that had supposedly maintained peace among the stars for millennia. 3,000 pages of formal protocols dictating everything from the proper declaration of hostilities to acceptable casualty ratios. Principle 82. Combat must be initiated through formal declaration, allowing all parties proper time for ceremonial preparations. Principle 157. Superior forces must permit honorable surrender when opposition falls below 30% operational capacity. Alina closed the document, a cold certainty settling in her chest. If the Arconians had indeed struck against the colonial fleet, they would have followed these principles to the letter, while finding some loophole to justify annihilation. The shuttle's proximity alert blared. Lieutenant Park's voice came through the intercom, tight with controlled panic. "Commander, we've arrived at Arcturus. You need to see this. All systems dark. Now." The Indomitable went silent, emergency power casting the bridge in blood-red shadows. The crew froze at their stations as the mighty experimental ship, Earth's most advanced vessel, drifted powerless among the asteroid debris. Through the view screen, Alina watched Arconian targeting beams slice through space where they'd been moments before. The enemy battlecruisers moved with mathematical precision, deploying in a perfect search pattern based on their last sensor reading. "They're following Principle 297, whispered Lieutenant Kwan, their navigation specialist. "Standard pursuit geometry for fleeing vessels." Alina allowed herself a grim smile. "That's their first mistake. We're not flinging." Lieutenant Commander Jackson monitored passive sensors from his tactical station. "At current drift, We'll pass behind that large iron-nickel asteroid in 40 seconds. Should provide additional sensor masking. And if we're detected before then? Dr. Chen asked, her voice tight. Then we die with dignity, Engineer Volkov replied matter-of-factly, his Russian accent thickening as he monitored the ship's dangerously unstable power core. Like proper warriors. No, Alina countered, her voice cutting through the bridge's tension. If detected, we fight with everything we have, dignity be damned. Outside, Arconian scanner beams continued their methodical sweep. The ship's outer hull temperature dropped rapidly as life support systems operated on minimal power. Frost began forming on interior bulkheads. Proximity alert, Jackson whispered. Arconian destroyer, bearing 17 Mark IV. Range, 2 kilometers, and closing. The alien vessel loomed overhead, so close that individual weapon emplacements were visible through the view screen. The destroyer's external lights pulsed in complex patterns, signal codes between Arconian vessels. They're discussing search parameters. Commander Ramos translated. The security officer's neural implant processing intercepted communications. The formation commander believes we've activated a cloaking device and is ordering depth charges. Alina's mind raced. If the Arconians deployed depth charges, spatial distortion weapons designed to disrupt cloaking fields, the Indomitable would be revealed instantly. Volkov, she said quietly, can you give me maneuvering thrusters without lighting up sensors? The engineer's fingers danced across his console. Da, Commander. Using chemical backup system only, no energy signature, but control will be imprecise. I don't need precision. Alina moved to the navigation station, gently guiding Lieutenant Quan aside. I need chaos. With the practiced hands of someone who'd flown everything from orbital shuttles to experimental fighters, Alina took manual control of the massive battlecruiser. As the Arconian destroyer positioned itself to deploy depth charges, she fired a 2-second burst from the ventral thrusters. The Indomitable lurched upward, deliberately scraping against the destroyer's lower hull. The impact would register as an asteroid collision on Arconian sensors, but the confusion would buy them precious seconds. Braced for counter-thrust, Alina ordered, her voice deadly calm as she fired the dorsal thrusters, sending the ship plummeting downward just as the destroyer's automated defensive systems activated, firing a spread of high-energy particles at the phantom attacker above. The particle beam instead struck another Arconian vessel positioned on the opposite side of the search pattern, the perfect distraction. Now, Lieutenant Chen, Alina ordered, sliding back from the navigation controls. Find us a place to hide. Somewhere they'd never expect a ship to survive. Dr. Maya Chen stared at the holographic data streams floating before her, the blood draining from her face as the translation algorithm completed its work. The Arconian research logs were meticulous, categorizing human test subjects by genetic markers, adaptation potential, and experimental endurance. They're breeding us, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ship's emergency systems. Hundreds of genetic combinations, tracking genetic drift across accelerated generations. Alina leaned closer, studying the clinical imagery. Why? What could they possibly want from human genetics? Adaptability. Chen pulled up comparative DNA sequencing. Look at the Arconian genome. Perfectly ordered, incredibly stable. No junk DNA, no redundancies. She switched to a human genome sequence. Now look at ours. Chaotic, redundant, constantly mutating. What they see as our genetic inferiority is actually our greatest strength. Lieutenant Quan, monitoring the ship's drift through the asteroid field, called over his shoulder. Commander, we've got 15 minutes before our trajectory takes us back into their search pattern. Alina nodded. Dr. Chen, download everything. Commander Jackson, what's the status on that research facility? The tactical officer consulted his scanner. Minimal defenses. They weren't expecting anyone to find it. I count 43 human life signs. Faint, but present. Can we transport them? Jackson shook his head. Not from this distance. We'd need to dock directly. Which means revealing ourselves, Security Officer Ramos added grimly. Alina straightened. Decision made. Engineer Volkov, I need power to engines and tactical systems in 10 minutes. We're going to execute Operation Prometheus. She turned to her officers, seeing both fear and determination in their eyes. The Arconians believe we'll either flee or fight according to their principles. We're going to do neither. Volkov's hands moved rapidly across his console. Ejecting fusion core is against every safety protocol in the book, Commander. This isn't by the book, Engineer. Alina's voice was steel. This is survival. As the Indomitable prepared for its desperate gambit, Alina moved to the communication station. Record this message for transmission to Earth. Highest encryption. She took a deep breath, aware that this might be her final report. Admiral Hashimoto, we've confirmed Arconian involvement in the disappearance of the colonial fleet. They're conducting genetic experiments on human captives. We've located one research facility and are attempting rescue, but there may be others. She paused, looking at the data still streaming across Dr. Chen's console. Sir, this isn't just about territory or resources. The Arconians see us as raw material. They believe our genetic adaptability can solve their evolutionary stagnation. She watched the Arconian ships continuing their search pattern, still following the precise geometric formations dictated by their battle principles. We're implementing Operation Prometheus. If successful, we'll attempt to rescue the captives and return with proof of Arconian atrocities. If we fail, she squared her shoulders. Recommend immediate military mobilization. These principles they fight by, they're not designed for peace. They're designed for predictable, controllable conflict. And humanity should never be either. As Alina ended the recording, Engineer Volkov called out, Core ejection systems ready, Commander. On your order. Everyone to emergency stations, Alina commanded. Let's show the Arconians why humanity's unpredictability is our greatest weapon. The repurposed casino beneath Las Vegas, once a playground for high rollers, now hummed with tactical displays and holographic battle simulations. The crystal chandeliers that had once illuminated poker tables now cast their glow over a war council unlike any in human history. The Arconians expect a response to their battle declaration within 72 hours, Alina explained, gesturing to the ceremonial document projected above the central table. According to Principle 114, our silence constitutes dishonorable non-engagement. Dr. Fatima Hassan, the historian, studied the Arconian tactical formations with narrowed eyes. Their military doctrine hasn't evolved in over 4,000 years. Every engagement follows the same patterns: ritual challenge, symmetrical deployment, and formalized exchanges. Like a dance where both partners already know the steps, Jin Park added, the poker champion's fingers idly shuffling a deck of cards. The question is, what happens when one dancer suddenly changes the music? General Okonkwo, resplendent in his African Unified Forces uniform, pointed to the holographic display of Earth's defense grid. We've already begun violating their expectations. These reprogrammed civilian satellites, they'll register as harmless communication nodes until they detonate. And that's just the beginning, Alina said, pulling up imagery of civilian cruise ships being fitted with experimental weapons systems in orbital shipyards. They expect military vessels engaging military vessels. They don't have protocols for luxury liners carrying antimatter charges. Damien Cross, the disgraced game theorist, had been silent until now, intently studying Sun Tzu's ancient text. He looked up, eyes gleaming with realization. That's it. The Arconians don't just follow these principles. They're psychologically dependent on them. Their entire civilization is built around predictability. And what happens to a species that can't handle chaos? Alina asked. Cognitive breakdown, Cross replied. Their decision-making fractures when faced with scenarios their doctrine doesn't cover. The holographic display shifted, showing the first Arconian scout ships approaching Earth's outer defense perimeter. They moved in perfect geometric formations, broadcasting formal identification as required by Principle 37. "They're scanning our defense grid," Okonkwo reported, watching the incoming data, calculating our capabilities, determining the honorable force ratio to deploy against us. Alina's lips curved into a smile that contained no humor. Time to introduce a variable their equations can't handle. She pressed a communication button. "Control, this is Admiral Reyes. Execute silent protocol." Across Earth's orbital defense grid, all communications ceased. No responses to Arconian hails, no formal acknowledgement of their presence, a fundamental violation of the very first battle principle. All conflicts begin with recognition of the opponent's status as worthy combatants. On the display, the Arconian ships hesitated, their perfect formation faltering momentarily, as they encountered a response their combat algorithms hadn't anticipated. "Now," Alina said quietly, "activate the Chimera satellites." Throughout the solar system, hundreds of civilian communications satellites, secretly reprogrammed during the 3-year preparation, simultaneously switched from passive transmission to active scanning, flooding Arconian sensors with contradictory data. As the alien vessels adjusted their sensors to compensate, the satellites detonated their hidden payloads, creating an electromagnetic pulse that rippled across the formation. 3 Arconian scout ships disappeared from the tactical display. "First blood," General Okonkwo murmured, without firing a single conventional weapon. "And without declaring war," Alina added, watching the remaining Arconian vessels retreat in disarray. "Let's see how they adapt to a species that refuses to play by the rules." Operation Thunderclap's success exceeded even Alina's most optimistic projections. Her tactical display showed Arconian sensor stations going dark across 6 star systems as Earth's retrofitted merchant vessels struck simultaneously. Without their early warning network, the Arconians' carefully choreographed defense doctrine collapsed within hours. "Ghost Fleet Alpha reports all primary targets neutralized," Commander Jackson announced, monitoring communications from the Defiance's bridge. "Minimal casualties." The element of surprise was total. Alina allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before steeling her expression. "Have all vessels execute their randomized withdrawal patterns. I want them scattered across 17 different rendezvous points, not returning to Earth." The bridge crew worked with focused precision, their months of preparation paying off in the execution of humanity's first interstellar offensive action. No one mentioned the enormity of what they'd just accomplished, crippling the defensive infrastructure of a civilization thousands of years more advanced than their own. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Liu reported, her expression puzzled. "It's not on any recognized frequency." The hologram that materialized before Alina was unlike anything human technology could produce, a being composed of crystalline structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. "Ambassador Corvex of the Volcrin," Alina acknowledged, remembering their brief meeting in the council chamber years earlier. "Admiral Reyes." The crystalline being's voice resonated directly in her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "Your species continues to surprise. We fight to survive, Ambassador, not to impress. And yet, you have done both." The hologram shifted, patterns of light flowing through its crystalline form. "The Arconians believe their principles made them invulnerable. You have demonstrated otherwise." A data crystal materialized on the command console, technology far beyond Earth's manufacturing capabilities. "This contains tactical information on Arconian defense systems," Corvex continued. "Their fleet positions, vulnerabilities, command protocols. We have observed them for millennia." Alina studied the alien diplomat. "Why help us now? The Volcrin have remained neutral for thousands of years. We were not always so." For a moment, the crystalline being's form flickered to reveal something darker, more primal. "Long ago, we fought as you do, adapting, evolving, refusing predetermined outcomes. Then we achieved such advancement that conflict became unnecessary. And now, Elena asked. Now we remember. The hologram expanded, showing Arconian warships regrouping, their formations shifting into attack patterns unseen in generations. The Arconians have declared you vermin. The first time, in 8,000 years, they have categorized an opponent as unworthy of honorable combat. They come not to defeat you, but to exterminate you. Elena's tactical display updated with new information from the Volcrin crystal, the massive Arconian armada repositioning toward Earth, weapons systems activating that had been theoretical until now. They have abandoned selected principles, Corvex warned. Their civilization cannot handle the cognitive dissonance of defeat by a lesser species. They will sacrifice their honor to preserve their worldview. Then we'll have to adapt faster than they can, Elena replied, already analyzing the new tactical data. Thank you, Ambassador. The Volcrin's form began to fade. We offer information, Admiral Reyes. What you create with it will determine whether your species deserves to survive. Prove your worth through survival, humans. As the hologram disappeared, Elena turned to her officers. The rules have changed. Prep all remaining vessels for immediate combat status. The Arconians are coming, and they're no longer fighting by their principles. Admiral Thalax stood on the command deck of his flagship Eternal Doctrine, mandibles clicking in irritation as tactical displays showed yet another human defense that defied prediction. 3 weeks into what should have been a 3-day campaign, the Arconian armada had lost 17 capital ships and 34 support vessels, casualties inconceivable against any council race. How do they continue to resist? He demanded, voice modulator struggling to contain his agitation. Their remaining defensive capacity is at 24%. Principle 198 dictates immediate surrender at 30%. His executive strategist, Sub-Commander Vex, approached cautiously. The humans appear to calculate differently, Admiral. They shouldn't calculate at all. Thalax slammed his armored claw against the tactical display. They're vermin. Primitives. Around him, his bridge officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Admiral's outbursts had grown more frequent as the siege extended beyond all projected timetables. Some whispered that the human unpredictability was affecting Thalax's mind, an unconscionable suggestion in Arconian military hierarchy. Incoming. The sensor operator's warning came seconds before the ship shuddered violently. Report, Thalax demanded, regaining his footing. A human mining vessel. Admiral, the weapons officer replied, mandibles twitching in disbelief. It accelerated to relativistic velocity and deliberately impacted Dreadnought 7. The tactical display updated, showing the complete destruction of one of the Armada's most powerful vessels, a warship that had survived 217 formal engagements over 3 centuries. They're sacrificing civilian vessels as weapons, Sub-Commander Vex observed. No formal combat training, no military value beyond their commitment to die for their world. Thalax's compound eyes focused on Earth, visible through the command viewport. Prepare the final communication. Cite their remaining defensive capacity. Demand immediate surrender as principles require. As his communications officer composed the formal message, Thalax studied the intercepted human communications. Unlike the precise, protocol-driven exchanges in Arconian military, the humans' messages were chaotic. Jokes in the middle of battle reports, personal comments interspersed with tactical information, emotional outbursts alongside strategic planning. Message transmitted, Admiral. Thalax waited, expecting the humans to finally accept the mathematical inevitability of defeat. Their response came seconds later. A single line of text in perfect Arconian script. Humans don't fight by your arithmetic. We fight until we win. The bridge fell silent. Such a response violated every principle of civilized warfare. It denied the very foundation of Arconian military doctrine. That conflict was an equation to be solved, not a test of will. Admiral, his supply officer interrupted hesitantly. We have a situation. Our extended deployment has depleted critical resources beyond projected parameters. Resupply vessels are delayed due to unexplained attacks in home sectors. Impossible. Thalax hissed. The humans have no capacity to strike beyond this system. Yet the evidence contradicted him. Somehow, while defending their homeworld against overwhelming odds, the humans had also found ways to disrupt Arconian supply lines across multiple star systems. On the command deck's observation platform, representatives from other council races watched with growing unease. The Rigelian observer's neural tendrils pulsed with rapid thought patterns. Perhaps, the Rigelian whispered to his Centauri counterpart, "We have misunderstood what constitutes strength all these millennia." The emergency council session descended into chaos unlike anything witnessed in 2 millennia of galactic governance. The Rigelian delegate's neural tendrils lashed violently as he confronted the Arconian representative. "You concealed the true nature of your research." The Rigelian's translator struggled to convey his fury. Genetic harvesting violates the most sacred principles of sentient rights. The Arconian diplomat, resplendent in ceremonial battle garb now disheveled from the physical confrontation, hissed a response. Principles evolved to serve civilization's needs. The human genetic potential could benefit all council races. Without consent, the Altian representative's gossamer wings vibrated with indignation. Is this how principles become tyranny? In the observation gallery, diplomats from 17 non-council species watched with growing alarm. For many, this was the first time they had witnessed the perfect diplomatic protocols of the council chamber fracture. Aboard the Defiance, now hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, Admiral Reyes met with representatives from the Rigelian, Altian, and Centauri delegations, 3 council races who had arrived in unmarked vessels to avoid detection. "Our governments cannot officially support your resistance," the Altian diplomat whispered, her wings folded tight against her body in the human vessel's higher gravity. "But privately, many admire your species' determination." The Centauri representative, his exoskeleton modified to appear less intimidating to humans, placed a data crystal on the conference table. Arconian fleet deployments. Their supply chains. Command frequencies. "Why help us?" Elena asked, studying the 3 aliens who had risked everything by coming here. The Rigelian's neural tendrils pulsed softly. For millennia, the principles maintained peace, or so we believed. Now we see they merely maintained stagnation. As the alien diplomats departed, the crystalline form of Ambassador Corvex materialized in the conference room. This time, the Volcrin brought 3 engineers, their bodies seemingly composed of living crystal, tools extending directly from their limbs. "We have observed your remaining vessels," Corvex communicated directly to Elena's mind. "Primitive, but adaptable. Like your species." The Volcrin engineers moved through the ship, installing crystalline matrices into the propulsion systems of Earth's 27 remaining warships. The human engineers watched in awe as the alien technology integrated seamlessly with their own. "This will allow maneuverability beyond conventional physics," Corvex explained. "What you call impossible angles of approach. Acceleration beyond structural tolerances." "At what cost?" Elena asked, suspicious of such generosity. "Observation." The Volcrin replied simply. "We wish to see what humans will create with advanced tools." With the enhanced ships ready, Elena gathered her commanders to implement Operation Hydra. Instead of attacking the Arconian fleet directly, Earth's newly enhanced vessels would strike simultaneously at 57 supply depots, manufacturing hubs, and civilian transport convoys across 12 star systems. "This violates Principle 42, Commander Jackson warned. "Warriors shall target only other warriors." "We're not warriors by their definition," Elena replied, studying the tactical display. "We're vermin, remember. And vermin don't follow principles." As the strike teams prepared to depart, Dr. Chen burst into the command center, her face pale. "Admiral, I've completed the analysis of the laboratory data. The Arconians aren't just harvesting us for genetic material. They're creating a species-specific bioweapon. If they can't defeat us conventionally, they'll eradicate us entirely, Elena finished grimly. Operation Hydra just became even more critical. The confrontation reached its climax as Thalax's flagship stood alone, the rest of his fleet having withdrawn or actively turned against him. On his command bridge, once the pinnacle of Arconian military precision, chaos reigned. Officers refused orders, communication systems blared with messages from the homeworld, and through it all, Thalax stood immobile, his exoskeleton rigid with the ultimate cognitive dissonance, the failure of principles he had followed his entire life. The humans should have surrendered, he whispered, mandibles clicking arrhythmically. The principles demanded it. His remaining loyal officers could only watch as their commander, once the embodiment of Arconian military perfection, crumbled before their eyes. 3 days later, representatives from across the galaxy convened on the ancient Volcrin homeworld, a crystalline planet open to outsiders for the first time in 50,000 years. The chamber, carved from a single massive crystal, amplified and reflected every sound, ensuring complete transparency in these historic proceedings. Elena arrived not as a supplicant, but as Earth's authorized representative with full diplomatic powers. Her battle-scarred uniform contrasted sharply with the ornate ceremonial garb of the other species, yet none questioned her right to stand among them. As she approached the central podium, the chamber fell silent. "The principles you followed for millennia," she began, her voice echoing through the crystalline structure, "were not designed to create peace. They were designed to create predictability, to eliminate the chaos of innovation, to ensure conflicts could be managed rather than resolved." She activated a holographic display showing humanity's journey, from stone tools to starships, from tribal conflicts to global cooperation, from primitive weapons to the quantum tactics that had defeated the Arconians. "We do not offer surrender. We do not offer compromise. We offer a fundamental truth. Principles that protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable are not principles at all. They are chains." One by one, representatives approached to sign what would become known as the Sol Accords, a new framework acknowledging each species' absolute right to survival and self-determination. The document contained no rigid protocols, no mathematical formulas for acceptable casualties, no predetermined outcomes. The Arconian delegation, now led by a reformist coalition that had overthrown the military hierarchy, signed last. Their new ambassador, a scientist rather than a warrior, approached Elena after the ceremony. "Your species demolished our battle principles," she acknowledged, mandibles clicking in a pattern that linguists would later identify as profound respect. "We fought you with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and millennia of doctrine, yet still you prevailed." Her compound eyes studied Elena with new understanding, not through greater strength, but through something we had forgotten. That determination, when fueled by the will to survive, can overcome any doctrine. As Elena took her seat in the reformed council chamber, now called the Galactic Cooperative, a Volcrin elder approached. The ancient being's crystalline form shifted to approximate a human handshake. "We withdrew from galactic affairs when principles replaced purpose," the elder communicated directly to her mind. "You have reminded all species of what truly matters. Not how one fights, but what one fights for." Elena gazed around the chamber, where representatives from dozens of species engaged in genuine dialogue rather than ritualized exchanges. "Will it last?" she asked the Volcrin. "Nothing lasts unchanging," the ancient being replied, crystalline structure shimmering with what might have been amusement. "That is the lesson you have taught the galaxy. Adaptation, evolution, determination. These are the principles that truly matter." As delegates from across the stars approached to speak with her, some curious, some admiring, some still wary, Elena realized that humanity had given the galaxy something far more valuable than victory in battle. They had given them the freedom to evolve beyond principles that no longer served life's fundamental purpose, to grow, to change, and to determine one's own destiny.